Yo, what's happening, people? Okay, so now it's time to talk about Buffy Season 5. So, I'm not sure which order these videos are going to go up in, and I'm not sure which order you're going to watch them in, but I've already talked about Angel Season 2. Now I want to talk about Buffy Season 5. I watched them at the same time, following a watch guide. Was it the Watchers Council website, blog site? That. It's not a review. This ain't going to be a review. It's just rambling about my thoughts and opinions and feelings whilst watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer Season 5 for however long the video is. And yeah, that's pretty much what I'm going to do. I'm probably going to get into some spoilers. I guess I'll try and avoid some of the big major stuff, but I'm probably going to say some stuff. So yeah, if you've not seen it, you should know that I'm going to get some spoilers. And if you have seen it, then, well, you already know that anyway. But what I'll say real quick as a non-spoiler review is overall, this was an okay season in my opinion. Actually, no, better than okay. Let me give it its flowers. It was better than okay. I think it started off okay, but certainly by the middle of the season, it was a lot better than just okay. It was a pretty good season, pretty solid season, and definitely a pretty strong ending to the season as well. So the first maybe half of the season, but after that is where it really started to pick up for me. So that's my non-spoiler review. So here's the thing. So I was told by, I think, at least 3, 4, maybe more people that Buffy Season 5 is the most dramatic season. And I would agree with that. At least so far. Of course, I've not seen 6 and 7 yet. But yeah, I would agree that this is the most dramatic season so far. Certainly by the time it gets to the end, from about the midway point onwards, this is, in my opinion, as well, the most dramatic season. The thing is that when you hear that, though, it does set a few expectations in your mind. And although it didn't quite meet what I was thinking, you know, that's not its fault. That's just because you're thinking stuff that, as when people takes the most dramatic, you're going to start thinking stuff. It wasn't quite that. So there was sometimes this element of, oh, okay, but overall, yeah, definitely, in my opinion, the most dramatic season. The way it started, though, I felt was very weak. Because it started with the story of Dracula, and it introduced Dracula as this really kind of mysterious, almost mythical type. Well, I mean, they're all mythical, I suppose, but you know, even in their realms, almost this mythical thing like this. Even other vampires aren't sure he exists. I think it's something to that effect. Like, he's such a mystery, and he comes across as very kind of suave, debonair, above regular vampire type thing. He's not going to be beaten so easily. He could control minds. You know, he's very much this very powerful vampire. And then in the end, like, he just gets stabbed. He disappears. He comes back, gets stabbed again, disappears, and he's about to come back. But Buffy's like, I'm still standing here, and he's like, so he just rolls away, and then you never see him again. And I don't know, maybe he pops up again in season 6 or 7. No spoilers, please. But at least for the rest of the season, you never see him again. So it was kind of like, okay, you had this really cool introduction for this character and did nothing with it in the end. It was just like, it was just really just not much more than a regular kill. So it kind of felt pointless doing all that just to have that basic ending to the episode. So yeah, it did feel. I would say the beginning, especially that first episode, was kind of weak for me. When they introduced Dawn to the season, I think this is, I can't remember. I think it's maybe a good few episodes in. She definitely wasn't the first 3 episodes, I'm sure. But when they introduced her, and it's kind of like, oh yeah, your sister's here, or you should hang with your sister, and they're both like, Mom. And I was like, okay, so my first thought was, oh, maybe this is her kid sister that was staying with her dad because her dad, you know, was not in the picture. He's like in wherever he is. So this is her staying with them for a little while. And then kind of like, no, she's always been there. So it's like, okay, this is a bit odd. So, and it went like that for a few episodes where it's like, you have this brand new character that we know, clearly a brand new character, but they're talking about her like she's just always been there. Like maybe just hasn't been on screen. You know what I mean? Like maybe she was in the next room while everything else was going on, or maybe she was down the street while everything else was going on. But she's always kind of been there, always involved in their lives, but just never been on camera. So it's kind of like this weird kind of adjustment you kind of got to make, where it's like, it seems an odd way to introduce somebody, but all right, if this is what we're going with, then we're going with that. But then, of course, you find out that it's not quite that. And that was really cool. That was really, really cool when you find out that Dawn was created by these monks and given these memories, and everybody was given these memories through the spell that they created, as if she's been there their whole life. But there's certain aspects that can see past that, like when people go a bit mad, like Joyce when she had the got the tumor, and I'm gonna have to talk about that in a little while as well. But everybody else who kind of went a bit mad, they could kind of see past that a little bit, and that gave them some clues as to something's not quite right here. So that was really cool. I liked that they did that, and then Buffy knowing that this isn't her sister, but it's also her sister because she remembers her. And then it's like this whole thing about, well, what is reality? Right? What is reality? Is reality just what we can, because we remember things that have happened, and we can see things in our shared plane of existence, and we can touch and we can feel and we have emotions, and that's what Dawn was through this spell, right? So is that real? Is that really her sister, or is it not because she was created? And like that's an interesting question as to what is reality and how do you define what is real? You know, is it just about what we can remember, or is there more to it? And if we're given memories, whether it's through a spell or through whatever it is, if we're given memories and we can remember them, and we can not just think of them or imagine them, but actually remember them, and we can feel like this has happened, I remember it, does that make it real? And if everybody else is remembering this and remembering experiences with Dawn and going to school and having friends and living her life, and they've all interacted, not just the Scooby Gang, but everybody has had these interactions, or we can remember these interactions, is she then real? Because she's real as far as we can tell, but she's also not. And that's an interesting thing about what makes something real and how does we define real. And I guess the truth is we can't define real, not in any real way. We can only define it in ways that make sense to us. But what happens when something transgresses that and still, so that was really cool what they did with Dawn, and her being this key to this unlocking dimension. I actually thought they were going to do something where, you know, they end up mixing with the dimension that the Angel Boys went to, but they didn't. And in fact, they actually kept the seasons pretty separately for the most part. There was a few things here and there where, you know, Willow showed up in Angel on a phone call, and Harmony showed up in Angel, you know, messing around because she had some issues, and Drusilla went from Angel to Buffy and that sort of thing. So there's a few crossovers, but for the most part, the storylines were pretty separate, and which is fine. So little itch, which is fine. I feel like it's probably best that they do their own things rather than trying to, you know, I mean, mixed storylines can work. Don't get me wrong, and MCU has clearly shown that you mix up storylines can work in great ways. But even with the MCU, it's like, especially now where there's so many things going on, it's like maybe it's best to keep a few things separately, so you just do your own thing and not worry about matching up with this line and matching up with that. So I feel like, it was probably a good idea to just do their own things for the season and just have a few bits here and there. But it's nothing, even though the story itself is pretty separate. But anyway. With Dawn being as key, and then Glory looking for her, and also with Glory and Buffy, I liked that relationship as well, because most of Buffy's enemies, you know, she beats pretty easily. You know, even some of the big ones, she ended up beating pretty easily, and it gets to a point where, I mean, I wouldn't quite say she's a Mary Sue, because I don't think that's quite accurate. but it's bordering along that a lot of times. It feels like she's too good a character for the enemies that she's facing. Glory now is somebody who's actually better than Buffy in terms of fighting. She's smarter, she's faster, and she's more aggressive. So in all these different areas, she's best Buffy. And now it's like, that is somebody that you actually have to overcome. And can she overcome it? In the end, she actually doesn't. Not really. She doesn't beat her. I mean, of course, you know how it ends with she jumping off the thing. But in essence, she doesn't actually beat her. So it's kind of like, I like that. I like that because I think with heroes, one of the things that makes, at least in my opinion, that makes a good hero is when you see them struggling to overcome something, and even if they don't, strictly speaking, overcome it, they can find, say, other ways around it, which is what happens with in this case. You know, if you can't beat somebody in a fist fight, maybe find another way to get past them, and it's kind of like that sort of thing. So I like the dynamic between Glory and Buffy, and the fact that Glory is this super powerful was it ex-gods they call her, but she of course has her flaws as well, because she's trapped in this human body and she's sharing that body with her brother, and her brother wants to try and do good things and help people, and she just wants to go home at the cost of destroying these dimension walls, and doesn't care what kind of evils cross over those. She gets what she wants. So everybody involved has their strengths and their weaknesses, and it all plays out in this way where, you know, where you don't really know. I mean, you know, because there's like 2 more seasons after this, but you don't really know who could, you know, can they band together and get the better of her, or is Glory just too powerful? It just seemed like every time they got an inch, Glory was right there. When they called Ben to help him out with Giles, because they didn't know at that time that they were sharing a body, and it turns out they are. So Glory was right there, and then she grabs Dawn, and even just like when they're trying to hide Dawn from everybody because Dawn hasn't figured out who the key was, and then because Tara went mad after Glory stuck her fingers in her head, turns up, Tara's like, oh, look at the light, look at the glow, look at the glow, and then that's how she figured it out. So it wasn't always like detective work. Sometimes it's just you got lucky, and that's fine. As I feel like getting lucky is fine, as long as it's not to the point where that's all you're doing, you know. So I feel like they balanced that out pretty well. They didn't just like rely on people getting lucky all the time. At least not to my mind. I don't think they did. I feel like that's pretty much the only time, or one of few at least anyway. But in any case, yeah, I like that they had this enemy that was so much stronger in pretty much every department than Buffy, and Buffy really had to. In fact, at one point she goes crazy herself because she's like, she gave up, and that's something you don't see too often. When Buffy, Glory runs off with Dawn out of the figure, and she kind of ran for a little bit and just gave up and just sat on the floor, and Willow had to go into her mind and try to coax her out of it. You know, that was like, that moment was real. That moment was so real with everything that was happening and had happened. And then this, that final nail, is like feeling like you just can't do it. I just can't do it. It's not that I don't want to, I can't. You know, that feeling of, I can't, I've tried everything, I've done all these things, I just can't do it. That was that moment. And that was so real when you're trying to do things. And it's so overwhelming. And you have those moments of giving up. In this case, she couldn't give up for too long because, you know, world at stake, right? Apocalypse, Armageddon, whatever. But in that moment, it was just giving up. So yeah, I like that they had these moments throughout where it wasn't just, oh, I'm the hero and I'm going to overcome anything. You know, it was like feeling it. Feeling that pain, feeling that anger, feeling that disappointment, feeling that overwhelmment, feeling like the whole world is just crumbling around you and there's nothing you can do about it, having all these powers and just still, you just, all the Slayer powers, and still, it's just not enough. It's just not enough. You know, that feeling of, what else can I do? And you just don't know. And you got these people around you and you're looking at them and what can they do? They're trying their best as well, but it's like, so yeah, that moment was real. And Tara, let me come back to Tara for a second, because like, there was an episode with Tara where I felt like they pulled some punches a little bit, because they had Tara's family come round and they were like, you know, she's half demon and we come to take her back so we could do whatever and look after her, and it was kind of a culty type thing, right? It turns out she's not half demon at all. It was just something they said to try and keep the women in check or whatever. And to me, it just felt like, really, you know, I mean, there's so much, and this is like late 90s, 2000s, even back then, there's so much you could have done with a character who is a witch, lesbian, and on top of that, her family thinks she's half demon. There's so much you can do with that, right? So much. And in the end, I was just like, oh, we're just going to leave her alone now. We come all this way, we're going to do all this, talk about taking her back, and just come with us, and she casts a spell, and then it goes so well. Spells don't always go so well, right? But then at the end, it was just like, okay. And they go home, and that was it. It was like, all right. Now I get it. It's a show, and there's got 20 whatever episodes, and I get that there's limitations in terms of you can't develop everything to the most amount of depth. But they certainly could have done more than what they did. And perhaps that develops more in season 6 or 7. No spoilers, please. No spoilers. I'm just saying. It felt like there's so much you could do with that character. Because up until that point, Tara's really been in the background. You know, she's really just been Willow's girlfriend. You know, that's pretty much it. You know, she's had a few moments, I guess. But generally, she's just background player. And that was like her moment to shine, I felt. That was like her episode to really step into the forefront and have all this history that we didn't know previously about her come to the forefront and develop that character from there even further, because now she's not just Willow's girlfriend. But in the end, it was just like, okay, you've had your moment in the sun, now you're back to being Willow's girlfriend. You know, that was like, come on, man, come on. There was so much you can do with that character. Maybe, like I say, maybe they do in season 6 or 7. I don't know. Well, that waits to be seen for me. But even in that moment, there was so much you could have done. But oh well. But let's talk about something that they did do a lot with now. And that is Joyce. Because from her having the tumor to getting the all clear, and then Buffy seeing her laying on the couch, that was too real. That was too real. And then the following episode, The Body, where Buffy is now dealing with, you know, calling the ambulance, them telling her to try the CPR, Buffy not really knowing what to do, she's in shock. And those moments where they have like they were giving her the CPR, they put the pipe down her throat, and she breathing out, like, oh, we never had someone come at this late before, but then you realize that's just in her mind. And she has all these moments where it's like things are happening, but it's in her mind. And that to me was too real. That was too real, because it's like, when if you known someone who's close to you that's passed away, someone really close to you, you have these moments of it's not real. They're gonna wake up any moment. It's not real. They're just gonna come around the door. Someone's gonna call and say it's you know what I mean? You have these moments like that, even though you know, you kind of accept it on some level, but you haven't really accepted it on all the levels yet. And those flashbacks they were showing, that's what it represents to me. That feeling of, oh no, it's not real. It's not quite set in yet. That episode, yeah, that hit. And I'm glad they didn't bring Joyce back, because I had the whole thing about the spell that Dawn cast to bring someone back from the dead, and they show the feet walk in, and they hear a knock on the door. You don't know if it's Joyce. You don't know if it was Joyce. Is she the Joyce or just some deranged zombie version of Joyce? You don't know, because Dawn then tore up the picture and it went away. I'm glad they didn't bring it back, because if they did, that would have cheapened that episode, the body episode. It would have cheapened it so much. And I feel like sometimes you need to have these moments where you don't crack a joke, you don't lighten the mood, you don't say, oh, it's all a dream, you don't do any of that. And you just let the reality, well, I mean, it's a TV show, but you just let the gravity of what the characters are dealing with sink in. And that's what that episode did. It really let that sink in. And in particular with Anya. Anya's been the character that is kind of like the comic relief, because she doesn't get the culture so much. She's a 1,000-year-old demon, and she was a vengeance demon for a long time, and so she sees things a different way. And often that comes, and now she's, adjusting to being a human now. So she says things almost, not so much without thinking, but just in a way where it's like most people in a modern culture wouldn't, because we have all these social cues that we grew up with, right? So she doesn't have that. So she's just saying what she thinks and saying what she wants to say in the moment. And it often results in the comedy. And in this episode, The Body, I liked that they found a way to keep Anya in her character, as she always is, but without being that comic relief. Because I was kind of like watching it thinking, shit, they're going to make a joke any moment, aren't they? And I hope they don't make a joke. I like jokes. I like comedy. I like comedy, but there's a time and a place, and this was so not the time for it. And so I was like, oh, what are they going to do with Anya? Are they going to... Because on one hand, you don't want them to just all of a sudden Anya gets everything, and she gets the culture and saying all the right things. You don't want to do that, because that cheapens the character. But at the same time, you don't want it to be saying these things that we take as funny, as this lightening the mood thing, because that cheapens the what's going on. So I like that they found the way to keep Anya in a character without cheapening the episode or cheapening her character either. So that, yeah, they did really well with that episode. That episode stood out to me for a lot of reasons. That's one of them, but mostly just because of how real it was, and just seeing that and those moments where you think about people who you've lost and how you felt and all the things you went through and how that's represented in this episode. So yeah, they really, with that episode, they really knocked it out of the park. And what's funny to me is that, well, not funny, well, kind of funny. Had I watched this episode, 20 years ago, whenever it came out, had I watched it then, I probably would have thought something along the lines of, yeah, it's sad, I can understand that it's a sad episode, I get that. But watching it now and having had the experiences I've had and known people who've passed away, people close to me, and being through that, and now watching an episode like this, it hits different. It really does hit different. And yeah, so that stood out to me, just being too real. So yeah. But yeah, let's move on to something a bit lighter. So, by the time we get to the end of the season, Buffy ends up jumping off the scaffolding thing into the thing and then dying. And I know there's 2 more seasons after this, so it's kind of like, yeah. But at the same time, it seems like this is the second time she's died now. Right? It's the second time. So, and no spoilers, please, no spoilers. But the first time she died, that's when Kendra came around, because there's next Slayer comes when once the next Slayer comes when the previous Slayer dies, right? So Buffy dies, Kendra gets anointed or selected or chosen, whatever it is, as a Slayer. But because Buffy came back to life, we've got two Slayers. Kendra gets killed, and that's when we get Faith. Faith is still alive; she's just in prison, right? So with Buffy dead, I guess, and again, no spoilers, please. There's another Slayer coming, or that's chosen. Whether or not she ends up in Sunnydale or whatever, that I guess that's what I don't know, or some of you will know it right now. But I guess it's another Slayer chosen. Somehow Buffy comes back to life. I don't know how, but I did see, because when you watch the episodes on Disney Plus, it shows like a little blurb of what the next episode is about. So it's like season 6, episode 1. It has like a little blurb. And I wasn't trying to read it. You know, you're not trying to read, because I don't want to accidentally spoil things. But at the same time, it's kind of like right in front of you. So there's a few words that I picked out. And I was like, okay, I think I know what's going to happen. But again, don't spoil it for me. I'm just saying that I guess they do some spell that brings her back to life, or something along those lines. That's what I'm thinking based on what I just saw in that blurb. But then of course they tried that with Joyce. They didn't. We don't know what happened. They did say that you bringing people back to life through that sort of method. You know, you could end up in zombie territory. You could end up in who knows what comes back. You know, it looks like them, but it's not them, right? So does Buffy go through some massive change after they bring her back from the dead with the spell? I don't know. You might know. Maybe maybe it's not even a spell. Maybe the spell don't even work, and they bring her back some other way. I don't know. Don't tell me. Don't tell me. But yeah, I guess there has to be 3 Slayers at some point. It's just whether or not we see who the third Slayer is, because Faith is still in prison right now, and Buffy comes back to life, but because she's dead, there has to be another Slayer chosen. So there's going to be 3 Slayers in the world at the same time, I guess. But yeah, let me come back a little bit, because I need to talk about Spike. Man, damn near forgot about Spike. So Spike was like, they gave him a chip in his head in the previous season 4. And from there, it felt like they were bitching out Spike a lot. It really did. And even in this season, for the first, maybe, again, for about the first half of it, it felt like Spike's character was just getting, ugh. And I was kind of like, man, are they... Because Spike's always kind of been, I mean, don't get me wrong, he's always loses anyway, so it's like, whatever. But he's always been like the bad guy. And now it's kind of like, well, he can't be bad because he's got this chip in his head. But then he can still do some bad-ish stuff, but not quite. But now he's developing feelings for Buffy. It's like, bloody hell. What are we doing with this guy, man? Come on. And that came across as just awkward. But I would say that I appreciate how they develops that. Because they didn't make it so that he knows he doesn't really have a chance with Buffy. He knows that. It's just he's dealing with these feelings that he himself doesn't really want to have. But, you know, you can't always help how you feel. I get that. I think we've all kind of been there. Sometimes you fall for the wrong person. I get it, you know. Sometimes you fall hard for the wrong person and you have no idea why, you know. And I guess that's kind of what happened here. He's just falling for the wrong person and he knows it. But he gets that robot bill, which is like, flipping out. What are you doing? But that's a whole other thing as well about sex robots and making robots that look and act like real people, and what's the moral lines in that, you know, like there was a TV show called Humans where they kind of delve into, well, not really delve into it, but they kind of go into that a little bit there. And I didn't watch Westworld. Well, I didn't watch much of Westworld, but I think they kind of do a little bit of that as well, about, you know, where is the line drawn when you have these robots that are robots, they're property, they're items, they're objects, but they're made to act like, made to look and act like real people. So where is that moral line drawn? It's like, yeah. But anyway, that's not a question we have to answer in the real world. Well, not just yet anyway. I mean, some of these, who knows, anyway. Might be a question we have to answer soon, I'm just saying, but not just yet. Anyway, yeah, and that so he built the robot, and I liked that the way they kind of do it, because by the time we get to the end, he's not just, I mean, he's still kind of the bad guy, but he's got more depth to him now because he's not just trying to bone Buffy. You know, there is a genuine care that he has for Buffy and Dawn. And even though that's so unnatural for him, you know, they've been trying to kill each other for however many seasons at this point. They haven't exactly been friends. So it's like, you know, so now they're here. And so yeah, I liked how they developed. I mean, it was a bit awkward in the beginning. Definitely felt like, and certainly in season 4, it felt like they were bitching him out quite a bit in the beginning of this season. But by the time it got to the end of it, I was like, all right, cool. I kind of like what they did with Spike. I liked how they kind of turned that around. Or maybe that was a plan altogether. I don't know if they turned it around, but maybe it was a plan all along. But either way, I liked how it ended with Spike and just how his character was. It gave him more depth to being to not be just being, you know, just guy in the background. It'd be interesting, and again, no spoilers, but if he ever does get that chip out of his head, what does that do? Because he doesn't have a soul. He liked being bad. He still is kind of a bad guy. And I liked his relationship with Dawn as well, by the way, because I think because of the fact that he is the bad guy, that kind of meant that he had a relationship with Dawn that she needed, right? Even though it wasn't necessarily him trying to give her what she needed. He's just, you know, Spike doing whatever. He doesn't really have a concept of, maybe I shouldn't take the little girl to see this wizard, this magician about bringing somebody back from the dead. Maybe I shouldn't help her break into the magic store and read books on that they should, you know, maybe you shouldn't. Most people would be like, nah, I'm not doing that. But Spike, being the bad guy, was like, okay. Okay. And not necessarily because he's trying to be bad, just because there's a level of not necessarily, like, there's care, like he cares but doesn't care at the same time. You know what I mean? Like, he doesn't, like, his caring isn't the same way most regular people would care. He cares in a different way. You know, because he's been this vampire for so long, because he doesn't have a soul, because he's enjoyed doing what he's been doing, William the Bloody, for so long. When he starts developing these caring feelings, the way he cares about Buffy and her family is different to the way a regular person would care. And that shows in the way he treats Dawn. And even though he wasn't, strictly speaking, trying to be the good guy, I felt like it meant that he was what Dawn needed without knowing that's what he was doing. You know, so that was really a cool way of developing a Spike as well. But yeah, Drusilla though. Drusilla is definitely my favorite character now. Even though she wasn't in this season that much, or Angel, she wasn't in it that much. From before, I've liked Drusilla the way Juliet Landau's portrayed her. It's just been excellent, and I think the few episodes she was in this season, she stole it for me, man. Like that bit where she's saying something like tinker, toy soldiers tinker around in your. I can't remember exactly what she was saying, but it was just so on point, and her whole persona, it just feels like that's not how she talks in real life. I know she doesn't talk like that in real life. But she just nails it. She absolutely nails it. And I don't just mean like I mean, like James Masters, that's not his real speaking voice. He does a really good accent, right? Like old school British accent, like kind of Cockney a little bit. You know, he does that really well. I feel like with Jessica Landau's Drusilla, it's not just the accent. It's just getting like the mannerisms of somebody who was like, I think like, she was supposed to be like a clairvoyant, not clairvoyant, but she had like visions, but before she turned into a vampire, she already had visions. So turning her into a vampire gave her the vision made her a bit more crazier than other vampires. And when you understand that, and then you see how she's been portrayed throughout from Buffy days to now, and that consistency, and just the way Jessica Landau has nailed it each and every time, I'm like, bruh. Big up Jessica Landau, man. Big up Jessica Landau, man. She does Drusilla just on point. So yeah, I like Drusilla is my favorite character throughout Angel and Buffy right now. Even though she wasn't in that many episodes in these in season 5 or season 2 of Angel, I think in total she probably like in 5 or 6 episodes, something like that. It's not that many, but yeah, big up. She nailed it for me. She absolutely just killed it for me. Even just those few words, those few lines, it was just like, yeah, gotta give her this flowers, man. Gotta give her her flowers, man. It's like, yeah. But you know, I think I've said all that I've wanted to say about Buffy season 5. I thought I'd have more to say about Buffy than I had to say about Angel. I guess I didn't. But I guess in the end, I still spoke for longer than I thought I would be. So it's a good thing I did them as separate videos. The last time I spoke about Angel and Buffy in the same video, and that was a long-ass video. And now I thought, okay, let me separate them into 2 videos. I didn't intend these videos to be this long, but I guess I had a lot more to say about these shows than I thought that I did. So here we are with 2 long-ass videos about Buffy season 5, and then one about Angel season 2. So whichever one, if you're watching this one and you haven't watched the other one, watch the other one. And if you've watched the other one, then watch this one. But I guess be watching this one. If you're hearing me say, watch this one. Watch my other videos as well. I've got other videos on the channel. Check them out. Check out my live streams. I do live streams from time to time. Check out my other channels as well. I've got other channels. Check them out. It'd be much appreciated. But that's going to be it for the minute. So guys, until whenever, if ever, peace.